Okay, welcome to the Region 12 Team Manager Training Meeting, and thank you for joining us this morning. In a moment, I'm going to introduce my regional board who helps put on this tournament. Last night, I sat down to try to tabulate how many years of experience we have on the board, and I stopped counting at 200 years. So what's interesting about that is only 25% of our board actually still has school-age children in the program. So you may ask yourself, why are we doing this as a board, and why do 150,000 other people all around the globe do this? We've all seen firsthand how DI improves the lives of our own children and the students in our community. They become more engaged, more creative, more self-confident. They learn to collaborate. They learn to become greater coworkers, and they're just generally more inquisitive. I mean, every student in school is going to learn in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, and they're going to learn and never use this. They'll learn and never use that a squared plus b squared is equal c squared. But what today's students need in their toolbox is the ability to approach impossible challenges and then think critically and solve those creatively. No doubt there are other programs out there that teach these skills, but what differentiates DI is our non-interference policy. Now, you as a Rising Stars team managers, you may or may not hear this term, but I just want to remind you as you're managing and coaching these kids that every time you do something for them, every time you interfere, well, you don't really interfere, but anytime you take over and do something for your young students, you steal from them the opportunity for them to learn and grow on their own. So while you as an adult may just know that, oh, the best way to put this thing together is to use this part and this glue, maybe, just maybe, the kids can figure out how to do it on their own. It may not be as good, but they may surprise you and solve it in a more creative way. So I just want to mention, in Rising Stars, and we're not going to get into too much of this, the interference rules are relaxed, but I want you as the adults to try and let the kids be as creative as possible. I mean, you may eventually need to tell them, hey, I know where we can get a refrigerator box. We can go down to Lowe's and get it. That would be something you wouldn't want to do with the competitive teams, but with the, kindergartner is not going to know that Lowe's has refrigerator boxes. So go ahead and do that for them. With that said, I just want to briefly introduce our board members, just by name mainly here. We have Tricia Bauer, Matt Becker, Donna Fontaine, Beth Frazier, Dave Gurrell, Scott Goldberg, Dee Gordon and her husband Warren Gordon, Renee Griffith, Barb Prail, Doug Prail, Rob Thompson, and Janine Yoshua. And I failed to mention, my name is Vince Pisciano, and I am the regional director for the Dayton area. You may recognize some of these names as I call them out, or you see them on your screen. Each and every one of them is committed to the success of DI in our program. They are there to help you. Anytime you want, you can go to our website, reach out to one of them, and they will be more than happy to spend as much time helping you as a team manager. So in this era of COVID-19, we're facing a whole new set of obstacles. This virtual format that you're in has its challenges, but it also presents, I think, new opportunities. If I can put my rose-colored glasses on for a moment, this virus is going to affect our global economy in a positive manner for decades to come. Employers in the future will demand that their employees have virtual experience. Think about it. Half your students that you're coaching this year are probably going to be working at jobs that that don't even exist yet. I mean, if my guidance counselor had told me, hey, you should check out and be a webmaster, I would have told them I hated spiders, and there's no way I was going to work on a web. So by teaching these young students how to look, how to think creatively and problem solve, we're really setting them up for a bright future. When we finish here today, I want you, at your next meeting, I want you to pay attention. Just take a mental picture of the chaos that's going on in your meeting. look and see how shy your students are, and some of them don't want to talk, some of them talk too much. Just store that memory away in your brain there. And then in March, when we gather again, virtually, unfortunately, to celebrate their team success, and you see what they produce, you see what they created, I want you to remember your next meeting. I want you to remember how it is that you brought them from where they were to where they finished. In DI, not necessarily for your kids, but it is in fact a competition. But we define success when they show up, in our case at Sinclair, or this year when they've submitted their video. That's when we define success. So in March, sit back and remember how that you've guided them towards this finish line. Thank you. Next slide. So just real quickly, we have a lot to uncover this right now. If you have any questions and answers, go ahead and post them in the chat, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the end. I see you all have your microphones muted, so that's good. We'll take a 5-minute break, about 60 minutes in. You can get a fresh cup of coffee. Everything that you see here today will be available on our website, including this recording that we're doing right now will be available if you need to rewatch it. I would encourage you to go to our website. We have we'll talk about this again, but there's a attendance sheet there that we'd really like everybody to fill out, just so we know who you are and we can get a sense of who it is that attended today, and if we can reach out to you with any, we can help you in any way. And with that, I'll turn the program over to Beth Frazier.
Hello, good morning. My part is to share with you some ideas about managing your groups. And of course, Rising Stars is a very young group. It's the non-competitive group, but it may be the first time that some of these children are really working together as a group. And one of the things that we want to say is that we need to keep focused on what DI is really all about, and that these children are going to be learning about each other. They're going to be, establishing relationships. They're going to be doing problem solving. And it's not just about getting all the medals, although in Rising Stars, they will get medals and not trophies yet. But it's really learning about this, getting along in the group process. Next slide. So preparing yourself and your team, and that also involves the parents as well as the kids, to expect and manage problems in the group. These will come up as far as how children get along with each other and how they support each other. And these are really good opportunities to help, our kids learn about themselves, learn about others, figure out how to solve real life issues. And I think this is one of the most important things that I've seen over the years. I started out as a team manager, was out of Sea of the Mind, and I saw children just learn to get along after maybe having some initial conflicts, and for the shy kids, many times the shy kids coming out and also growing so much in that realm. Next slide. Okay, so as a team manager, no matter where you're meeting, whether it's in your home, whether it's at school, you need to really set and consistently enforce clear expectations about the kinds of behavior that need to happen, and especially in your home and really anywhere. And in this case, adjusting, their behaviors and learning to, in this case, what you expect and what the consequences would be that they would experience. So it's making sure that, there's some kind of order and some kind of clear expectations about what's appropriate when they come to your home or to your any space that you're practicing in. Okay, next slide. And again, important thing is not to ignore this misbehavior, especially during the initial meeting. It rarely, in this case, auto corrects itself. So right away, you have to be aware that don't ignore that that misbehavior and just recorrect, these or redirect these kids in their behaviors. Okay, next slide. And then we have stages of development and the stages of group dynamics. There was a psychologist who formulated these different stages of group dynamics for adults as well as children and how they go. The first one, of course, is forming stage, and that's where members are really, are very at the first meeting, mostly quiet, maybe pretty reserved. It's just the very first meeting. In the next stages, you might have more kids pushing boundaries or getting into some conflicts or digging in their heels. They might be interrupting each other, some of these things. And this is called the storming stage. And we need to learn also how to, talk about, when they talk about I, we need to change that dynamic and talk about the team, talking about we. And so it's kind of formulating, it isn't just, their ideas, it's getting to accept, others' ideas as well. The norming stage, resolving differences and appreciating each other as team members. This starts to evolve as time goes on. And certainly they become a more interactive team, and they learn how they can speak with each other and accept each other and their ideas. Especially through brainstorming, they can begin to be non-judgmental about a lot of things and to look at things as a group. And lastly, performing. A lot of the processes lead to an achievement of the team. So we have, in that part, we are really experiencing stages of group dynamics developing. Some stages can overlap or go back and go forward, but these are some of the basic stages of group dynamics. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. So when you're resolving a problem, the resolutions, there's a kind of a three-step process here to resolve the solution. And you can resolve with the team or in private discussions between you and your student. And with young children, this is probably really the most important, that you talk to them privately. They may not be ready yet as a team to discuss what's going on. You can also, at some point, if this continues, involve the parents and your district coordinator, and basically trying to seek counsel of other people in this process. It's not always an easy thing to do, but you may need to enlist someone else's help, especially with parents, to resolve some of these issues. Next slide. Okay. It's really helpful to work with a co-manager. It's helpful to have another adult present just to observe and respond to these challenging situations, and to support you, to support the team in coming up with some solutions and being there to, just help guide the team as well. Okay, and next slide. Okay, finding really a delicate balance between being task-oriented and fun-focused. Certainly with young children, they're there to have fun and they're there to work with being creative, but it's also setting an agenda many times for the meetings and being somewhat task-focused, but also fun-focused in the kinds of activities that you're going to do. This is going to allow teams the issues are more likely to occur with managers who either try to do all of one and not the other. So it's important not to drift to either extreme where you might lose the kids. And I know that there's many ideas that can help with what team managers can do. I think in the roadmap section, if you have any, your coordinators, or if you have access to the roadmap, there's a whole area in there of facilitating, all kinds of examples for facilitating success with teamwork. And so there's many resources within that roadmap for that kind of thing. And I think I'm just going to, let's see, consult with others if you're having issues. Okay, I think that's one we talked about before. I want to just say that with young children, sharing some activities for teamwork is really important, that are physical in many ways, that are going to have them have to work as a team. And then I wanted to just share a very quick story about teamwork. And this one, they get to talk about what it means. As each bird flaps its wings, it creates an uplift for the bird following. By flying in a V formation, the whole flock adds 71% greater range than if the bird flew alone. And of course, you ask them, okay, well, what do you think about that? And the lesson, of course, is people who share a common direction and a sense of community can get where they're going quicker and easier because they're traveling on the thrust of each other. So with that, I will be welcoming any questions later on, but I think when you're a Rising Stars team manager, there's many key things that you might want to know about group dynamics. And so feel free to contact me or anyone else on the team, but also look at the roadmap where there's lots of resources. And I will pass this on to Matt.
Hey, Doug, we're running a little bit early. So if anybody has any questions, if they want to raise them right now, we'll entertain those. Otherwise, we will continue with Matt. So let's pause here for about 20 seconds. If anybody wants to turn on their microphone and ask a question real quick.
Looks like Megan raised her hand. Go ahead, Megan.
Yes, do you guys have any resources on how to deal with language barriers within your group? In one of my groups, one of the kids, her mom has a little bit of a language barrier and seems to have her little one translate for her. Do you have any resources on how to help with that?
So Megan, I personally don't have any at my fingertips. I can certainly search out our resources from our headquarters to see if there's anything. Of course, Google's always your friend if you want to look at that, but I will take it upon myself to see if there's anything out there, because we are part of a worldwide organization. They might have something like that. So
Yeah,
That'd be awesome. Thank you so much.
good question, Megan. Anybody else? Okay, Doug, we'll go ahead and turn it over to Matt.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Beth and Doug and Vince. So we're going to talk a little bit about effective virtual meetings. And I'm going to start with, actually, if you go to the participant panel, so Megan has already been there because she raised her hand. But if you go to the participant panel and click on that, you will see at the bottom a yes or no button. So first of all, I want you to click, how many of you like virtual meetings? Click yes or no. So click yes or no. Okay, so I've got a few yeses, a couple of no's. Okay. Let's give it a little bit more time, see if we get anybody else. So if you're having trouble finding the participant panel, it's probably at the bottom of your screen. You'll see it says participants, and if you click on that, and now I'm starting to see some coming in. So click yes, no, all right, okay. I'm getting one that says go slower. Okay, good. So now I'm going to clear these all out. How many of you have actually led a virtual meeting? So click yes or no if you have led a virtual meeting.
Does that count today?
Yes, it does, Vince. Yes. All right, good. So we've got several people who've led virtual meetings. Okay, so here's the thing. I've been managing, this will be my third year managing the DI team. I've been involved with DI for many years, and my kids have been involved. It's going to be a different year. As Vince said, there's a big part of us that loves being in person. But it doesn't mean that the experience has to be diminished because it's going to be virtual. And as Vince was alluding to earlier, our kids this year are going to learn skills that they really wouldn't learn in any other DI year, because the videoing aspect of this and submitting a video is going to be completely different than anything they've ever experienced before. And so that's really going to be a great opportunity for them. So what we want to just briefly touch upon here today are some things to be aware of that can help make virtual meetings a little bit more effective. I'm going to hit this at a super high level. There's tons of different resources out there for you, but we just want to give you a primer of some things to consider. So if we could go to the next slide, Doug. So a few basic tips. So I'm going to go back to the participant panel and ask you another question. How many of you have been on a virtual meeting where you and maybe one other people were virtual and everybody else was in a room? So this is like pre-pandemic. Everybody's in a room, but you and maybe one other person. So if you've experienced that, click a yes. Okay. So I'm getting a few people. Yes. Okay. So if you have experienced that, what I would ask you to do is go in and the chat panel and just send me a quick chat. What was that experience like? So you or maybe one other person were virtual and everybody else was in one single room together. What was that experience like? So just quickly drop in the chat feature some descriptions of what that experience was like. Anybody? I know there's at least a few of you that experienced that. Difficult to contribute effectively, frustrating and unproductive. Okay, good, thank you. It was difficult. Okay, so this is why the very first point I want you to walk away with is virtual for one, virtual for all. Kind of like as I was writing this up, I was thinking like the Three Musketeers, all for one and one for all. Virtual for one, virtual for all. If a single person is virtual, your whole meeting needs to be virtual. Otherwise, it's a horrible experience for the person who's virtual. And that's I'll tell you, I work in leadership development, organizational development. We've been pushing this in our organization for years. That's one thing that's come out of this pandemic, is I think it's helped people realize virtual meetings can be much more effective if everybody's virtual. So don't try to have one kid or two kids virtual and the rest of you in a room. It isn't going to work. So really make sure everybody's virtual if you're going the virtual route. Turn your video on. Now, again, I know some people are uncomfortable with this. As you've seen some of us, like I've got a cold, so when I have to blow my nose, I'm turning my video off. You know, that stuff's fine, but we really encourage people to turn your video on because it helps with that connection. It's not the same. It's certainly not the same as being in person. But when you can see people's smiles, you can see their frowns, you can see their body language, it really makes a big difference. So, and you're probably going to have it, you know, if you think about it, if you have you and a co-manager, and even if you have a full team of 7, there's only 9 of you. So it's not a huge meeting. So all the more reason to have the video on so you can see each other, which is a good lead into mute background noise. Now, what's interesting in a situation like this, it's very helpful to have everybody have themselves muted because I'm presenting. When you're having a conversation, it's much better to have everybody's mute off if you could, so that it's a more free-flowing conversation. However, if somebody's in a space where there is a lot of background noise, you want to make sure you're managing that. And as the moderator of a platform like Zoom or any other platform you use, you have the ability to go and mute those individuals. So don't feel like, oh my gosh, I can't mute them. I got to tell them, or I got to figure out who it is. You usually can see in your participant panel who isn't muted and maybe where the noise is coming from. Sometimes their box will, if they've got their video on, even if they don't, their box will kind of highlight. So you can go and mute those individuals yourself. probably, again, extremely important. I was going to say most important, but I could say that about all of these, is ensuring equal participation. Now, that can be challenging because just from a personality standpoint, some people are more introverted, that want to hang back a little bit more. And even in a in-person meeting or team session, you really need to make sure you're hearing from everybody. In the virtual environment, sometimes it can be easier for people to kind of recede back into the background. That's why you want to use some of these participation techniques like the chat, like the participant panel, and some other things I'm going to show you, because it can help make it a little bit easier for them to jump in. And then make sure you take breaks. This has always been important, but extremely important in a virtual environment. You know, whether it's 20 minutes, 30 minutes, what have you, take a break. You know, I don't know what platforms you're going to use. I'm very comfortable and familiar with Zoom. One great thing about Zoom is you can use Zoom free. However, if you have 3 or more participants, you only can do 40 minutes at a time for free. So if you're going to use Zoom, that might be actually a great way to make sure you take a break, is you could go for 40 minutes and take a break and then reconvene and do another 40 minutes. And that, you know, so take a 10-minute break, do 40 minutes, take a 10-minute break, come back, do another 40-minute meeting, and maybe that's your meeting. So you can purchase, Zoom is about $15 a month if you want to have your own account so that you're not limited by that 40 minutes. So that's just another option. But there are other options out there like Google Hangouts, WebEx, GoToMeeting, and I don't know any of the prices or features of all of those. I'm just most familiar with Zoom. And so what I want to show you here today are just a few features of Zoom that frankly are probably very similar in a lot of other platforms. So if you look at these other platforms, one, you might want to make sure they have these kinds of features, but also they're most likely going to. So if we can go to the next slide. The first is, so this is a screenshot of in Zoom if you were to share something. So if you look at the bottom here, and I'm not sure if you guys are seeing my pointer or not, but if you look at the bottom, you'll see that green box where it says share screen. And if you look at your Zoom window, you'll see that same green box. So anybody, like we've set this up so that anybody could share something if they wanted to. So it's important to allow, I would think it's important to allow your kids, they might have something they want to share, they might have a picture, they might have gone and done some work on their part of the project, and they may have some pictures or some notes or something that they want to share, so they could share and upload it. You might be wanting to share the detailed descriptions of the challenge that you guys are going to talk through. So that might be something that you share on the screen so that everybody can see that. So when you click the share button, you'll see the different things pop up in this window that you could share. So I could share my desktop, which I don't typically do. I would typically share a file. You could share a whiteboard, which we'll talk about here in a minute. Or like I said, you could pull up the PDF of the challenge that you want to talk through, or a slide that maybe you created, or a picture that somebody on the team created. One little thing I will tell you is you need to make sure it's already open on your computer or it will not show up in this box. And for some reason, I have noticed at times, even though I have the file open, when I first open up the share box, it does not show. So what I have to do is I have to close the share box, go back and select the file again on my computer, just kind of pull it back up, even though it was already open, then go back into the share box and it appears. So I don't know why that little glitch happens at times, but I want you to know that so you don't get kind of thrown off like, oh my gosh, I can't share this document. Just go back to the document, pull it up to the top of your screen again, and then go back into Zoom and try to share again. All right, so that's one basic feature that you'll probably want to use. If we can go to the next slide. So this is a whiteboard. So you saw one of the things you could do was share a whiteboard. I think this is something you're going to want to leverage. This allows your teammates to come and write on the whiteboard. So you'll see that banner across there that says select and text and draw and so forth. So they can type in there, they can hit draw in different marker sizes and different colors, and they can draw on there or write with the marker, the pencil. So this might be a great way if you're brainstorming. Okay, we need to solve this part of the challenge. You could even type the details of the challenge at the top, and then say, okay, what are your ideas about how we could do this? And let them type away. I mean, they can be talking, but they can also be writing and typing, and that's a way of capturing that. And you can actually then save that information to your computer so you don't lose it. You could also create a slide with information on it that you want them to do the same thing, and they annotate on the slide just like they would a whiteboard. So this is a very, very helpful feature that I would encourage you guys to use. Doug, if we can go to the next slide. Breakout rooms. I think this is going to be another feature you will want to leverage. So you can bring the group together. Let's say you're going to do that. You're going to use the free version. You're going to do 40 minutes, then take a break, and then 40 minutes. So you bring the group together. You spend 5-10 minutes kind of saying, okay, here's what we're going to do today. And you say, okay, I want you guys to spend 10 minutes focusing on these two parts of the challenge. And maybe you give a certain group one part of the challenge and a certain group another part of the challenge to just kind of brainstorm on, and you break them out into groups. Or maybe it's later after they've kind of divvied up their responsibilities and what they're going to work on. So to create a breakout room, if you see on that far left screenshot in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see it says breakout rooms. You would click on that first, and then this pop-up box would say, okay, how many breakout rooms do you want to create? Do you want to assign them automatically or manually? So if you pick automatically, it's just going to randomly group the people in your call, okay? So if you want them to do, if you want to do it manually because certain people have already selected certain aspects of what they're going to work on, then that's when you want to do assign manually. And then once you do that, so I did 3, and then the next thing that comes up is breakout rooms 1, 2, and 3. You can rename them. You can assign. So this would be if I was doing it manually, you can assign who's going where. And then once you click open all rooms, then what you would see is this third screenshot where it shows the rooms in progress. You'll see down there you can broadcast a message. So if you want to send a reminder message, you want to say, hey, you guys have 2 minutes left, you can send that message to all of them, and it's going to pop up and they're going to see it. And then once the time is up, you hit close all rooms. And there's actually a 60-second window. So once you hit close all rooms, they'll get a message that the breakout rooms are closing. Some people might choose to come back right away, but within 60 seconds, the system will kick them back into the group. So they still have a 60-second window in there to continue their conversation. All right, so let's move on to the next feature here. So this is the participant panel, and we've already practiced this, and I was debating whether to throw this in there or not because I was trying to think about how you guys might use this. I do a lot of training, and I've used Zoom a lot in training. I love using the participant panel just like I did with you guys, asking some questions, getting you guys involved. It allows me to kind of see where people are gauging, your input. So think about how you might use that, because again, especially if you've got some quieter people, it gets them engaged in the conversation because it gets them thinking and so forth. So I think that's a good tool to use. All right, so let's move on. And then finally, chat. We use this. I asked you to share some information or your experiences of being in a virtual meeting by yourself. So you've seen how that works. Again, in smaller groups, my hope is that you don't have to use chat as much because you're getting into it and people are comfortable and they're throwing their ideas out there. But if you sense that maybe people are hesitating or holding back, maybe the chat is a better way of doing it. So I don't know that you would use it quite as much. One thing to note, and I think some of you guys have seen this, is you can send the chat to everyone or you can send a private chat to a specific person. Also, you'll see where it says file, you can drop a file in the chat. So if there's a file that you want people to be able to access that they could pull up, open, and save on their computer, you can drop a file in chat as well. All right, I've got one more slide, I believe. Yeah, okay, so I just want to talk about some team building and icebreaker activities that you can do in Zoom. And actually these first 4 or 5 come from the addendum to the addendum to the roadmap. So there's an addendum to the roadmap for virtual experience, and these first 5 come from there. So you can get more information there. And they're kind of variations of things that you could do in person. So photo of your life is a great one. Have somebody share a photo of something that's important to them or meaningful to them or something exciting they did over the weekend or what have you. Alphabet game is you pick a letter to start with in the alphabet, like R, and you have them tell a story, and the first sentence begins with R, and then the next person has to start the next sentence with S, and so forth. It's very similar to the next one, which is one word at a time, where you're building a story just one word at a time versus a sentence at a time. So a couple different variations of that. Energizer is, you could ask them to pick a TV show that their favorite TV show, and have them act out their favorite scene or create their own scene. Go, I've never heard of Go. It's kind of like, my interpretation is like Simon Says, except for, you say, pat your tummy and jump up and down, go. And they can't do the command until you say go. And so that's a good one, especially to physically get people moving and do something different. A good social question, and one of the things we always do is start our team meetings with something like this, where we call it our question of the week. When we would be leading up to Halloween, it's what are you going to dress up like for Halloween, or what's your favorite part of Christmas, or whatever it is. And so we just go around and have everybody share. So it could be, what's a dream vacation you'd love to take, or what's your proudest accomplishment, or what's your favorite holiday, or whatever it might be. Time machine, if you could go back in time, where would you go and why? And then two truths and a lie. I saw a version for kids, you could call it two truths and a fib. But really it's all about just getting them to pick three things about themselves, two things that are true, one that isn't, and see if everybody can guess who the person is. So what they would do is they would send them to you, you would read them, they would then see can they guess who this person is, and then can they guess what is not the real thing. So those are fun energizers, things to kind of lighten it up. Beth, one thing that Beth said I really liked is kind of balancing being task-oriented and fun-oriented. I am a task-oriented person by all means. My wife is the fun-oriented person. So sometimes that means she and I are butting heads because she's wanting to break it up and interject some fun, and I'm worried about getting stuff done. But I'm grateful that she does that, because I think the kids would be bored if I was just driving to task all the time. So it's good to have that balance. And if you do have a co-team manager, it can be good if one of you is more task-oriented and one's more fun-oriented, break it up. So I don't know where we're at on time, but that's the end of my segment. So do we want to take questions now or wait till the end?
Sure. Yeah, we have a couple minutes. If anybody has any specific questions to Matt, go ahead and turn on your microphone and ask them now. Okay, last chance. So we have one more topic and then we're going to take a break. So let's go ahead and move on to the next topic, which is our youth protection policy. This is new last year and they've really hit it hard this year. I just want to say DI, they're providing the educational experiences where team members can thrive, learn, and have fun in a safe and caring environment. Everyone in this room either has or will have passed a background check in order to be a team manager. It is a sad reality of our time, and I'm definitely not here to bum you out, but this is something we need to go through real quickly. Next slide. So these policies are in effect whether we're meeting virtually or in person. Any meeting involving an adult must have a team manager who's gone through background checks. You as a team manager, before you can really get into getting your challenge, you need to agree to what DI calls a code of conduct. And part of that code of conduct involves you reading and following the youth protection policy. You can view the current policy on our website. And I know it sounds hokey, but I would really encourage you to download it, read it, and follow it. Next slide. I'm going to go off script a little bit. Everybody take a moment to fidget in your chair. This next session it's as uncomfortable to hear as it is for me to talk about. Outside of your control, there will be, not necessarily will be, but there could be child abuse going on. Me, myself, and you, I imagine, we're not trained professionals. We're not social workers. This is not something you need to devote your life to, but you need to be able to just be open to recognizing the signs of abuse. The abuse can be emotional, physical, or God forbid, it could be a sexual abuse. Next slide. I myself, as I mentioned, I'm not really trained to discuss these with you. Unfortunately, DI has developed an online course for you to review. Next slide. If you look in your inbox for an email, it will be from a domain called Captivate Prime, inviting you to enroll in Adobe Learning. And I'll put that into the chat, exactly what it is. If you can't find it, you can request a new invitation by contacting DI. And again, I'll put her information into the chat. It's a training system that DI has developed. There's a specific module on the youth protection policy. And within that module, it goes into how to see and recognize occasions of some type of abuse going on. There's other things in there, good things in there, like how to fill out an expense report, how DI scoring works. So you really need to, it's kind of a chore to get in there because you have to create an Adobe account. But once you create an Adobe account, it's linked to your DI account. And so they keep track of what courses you've had. So next slide. I want to finish off this topic by stating, I'm sure none of you in this meeting could even contemplate harming a child. I mean, to me personally, it's inconceivable that I would ever do that. But here's why this policy is in place, and it's so important for you to read and follow. Out there may be some child trapped inside their house because of COVID, and you might be, or their teacher might be, but their teacher may have 20 students. You might be their only link to the outside world. They may silently be calling on you, hoping that you're going to notice well, maybe not hoping, but throwing off signs that something's going on, something that you would see as a classic sign of abuse. Next slide. Like I said, I'm going off script here from what's on the screen, but I know what I'm talking about is a big bummer. I remember sitting in a meeting just like you are now and going, oh my God, DI is just not worth it. I don't want anything to do with this. This is beyond my comprehension. I don't want to think about it. I want to ignore it, and hopefully it doesn't happen in my community, but this will not go away. Your students, God forbid, they're counting on you to be brave and deal with this and take appropriate action. Again, read the policy, and just, read it once, understand it, and then, you can lock it away and hopefully never have to think about it again. So, phew, I hope you're still all with me. That was as painful for me to talk about. I was actually getting a little ill just even thinking about it. We're going to grab a quick break right now. We're a little bit ahead of time. Go ahead and go to our website. I'll put that into the chat during the break and fill out, if you haven't already, here it is right now. Fill out that attendance thing in there. We just want to keep track of who you are so we can tailor our training in the future. We're going to go ahead and, Matt, go ahead and pause or stop the recording. And then we'll take an intermission and we'll meet back at Doug at 10:05. Or do we want to start a little bit sooner? Oh, Doug, I'm sorry, you're on mute.
I know we had planned on 5 minutes. Let's make it more like 10 though, and plan to restart at 10 o'clock.
So it's 9:50. We'll start right at 10 o'clock on the dot. So we'll see you then. Thank you. Okay, and we're recording. And next up on the agenda is the virtual tournament with Doug Prale. Go ahead, Doug.
Okay, so for the 2020-2021 season, the entire DI system has been revamped, And team challenges are going to be solved by creating video presentations. This is across the board. This is going to be new for everybody. Normally we're used to a live presentation, but these are some of the changes we're seeing. Our regional and affiliate, which is the state level tournaments, they're going to be presented as virtual tournaments. You're going to be submitting videos over YouTube, submitting documentation paperwork through the DI resource area. And we're going to be doing this all from the officiating side. Appraisers will be implementing everything online as well. So basically nobody's going to be in person for the experience. We do have a number of deadlines that will be coming up. Again, it's kind of a shortened season too while they revamped everything. So some of these will be coming up fairly soon, or at least it feels soon. I know you guys are just getting started, but the time crunch feels real already for, I think, everybody. So the first thing we have coming up is deadlines. The regional registration deadline is going to be January 8th. DI will be directly releasing, slides are floating around, sorry about that. DI will be releasing the instant challenges themselves on February 5th, and there will be a deadline for submission by February 8th. Again, that's through their system. And then the Rising Stars team challenges that you guys are putting together will be due in through the system tentatively February 23rd. We're still working out exactly the dates on that. There could be a little bit of float in there, but you will receive all this information as well as probably quite a bit more through email, mostly coming from Vince. The tournament itself normally would be a one-day activity. We'd all be down at Sinclair. Instead, this year, it's going to be actually spread out over a bit of a time span here. Most of what we'll be doing with the Central Challenge, which is the main part of your challenge, will be centered over the weekend of February 27th. That is somewhat tentative at this point. Things like Instant Challenge will actually be happening earlier by about a week or two. That's really just to kind of give everybody enough time to kind of adjust to what's going on and shoehorn in some time to work. Again, normally we'd just all be in one place on one day and get it out, and it's a very busy day. So this is going to be new to us as well. For your presentation itself, the Rising Stars Challenge recommends a video of about 5 minutes. For the competitive challenges, they say it must be 5 minutes or less. Rising Stars is a bit more relaxed, so they do give you some leeway in there. Unlike in past years where setup is part of your time limit, that's not the case here. You can basically be set up to go from action when you start filming. Again, a bit of a twist if you have some past experience with DI. They're asking that when you upload the YouTube videos that you put information in so that we can be sure we're identifying the right team. There's going to be a lot of links floating around that our appraisers and organizers will have to deal with. We don't want your team lost in the shuffle. We don't want to give comments on your performance to another team. We don't want to be giving you feedback based on somebody else's performance. So this just kind of helps straighten everything out. You can do this basically wherever you want as performing or actually recording your performance. Be aware, we don't know where we're going to be come February. So that could mean that you're finding a way to record, your team is finding a way to record their individual contributions remotely. You might be able to find a space that works for you where you can actually come together. That's going to have to vary by team. We realize it's a lot of unknowns between now and then. But you need to use a space that allows you to record a performance that shows the things you need to show. There will be things your team has worked hard on for, you know, several months, and if that doesn't come across in the video, that's kind of a loss both for you guys and for us, because we can't evaluate something that we can't see or can't hear. This does mention scores would be affected in the case of Rising Stars. We're looking at feedback, but again, we want to see the things that you've worked so hard on. Make sure whatever space you end up using that you clean up after yourselves, especially if you're using spaces in the community. You want to be good ambassadors for the program and make sure that, you know, you don't leave a bad impression of DI as you're going. On top of the video presentation itself, teams are encouraged, or have the option, well, no, I think encouraged is the right term here, are encouraged to turn in basically their own Q&A video where they can highlight some things outside of the performance. So if your team makes some gizmo, gadget, whatever, or works really hard on a particular prop, you know, it may not make sense to really focus on it during your presentation. It's there, we want to see it. But if you want to come back and show, well, this is how this works, the lever does this and the spring does, or you want to highlight the painting that was used or the construction, this Q&A video is the opportunity to do that. Normally the appraisers would come up and meet with your team, ask a lot of questions about how did you do this, whose idea was that. This is the stand-in for that. Everything you submit is going to be coming in through the resource area at DI. You should, if you already have team memberships, hopefully you've already gotten into that resource area. That's where you're going to get challenge information and other things connected to the program. That is basically the entire data flow for DI is through their resource area. When you do put stuff up on YouTube, though, you want to mark it as unlisted. That keeps the general public from stumbling across your videos. And it's just, you know, the privacy setting you want to go with. Okay, so moving a little more broadly here, DI is a messy process. I know a lot of the first-year team managers are kind of feeling this right now, trying to figure out what they're getting into. And honestly, with all the changes, we're kind of in the same boat. You know, there's no clear path from beginning to end. Every team's going to do it a little bit differently. But we do want to highlight some resources quickly here that will help you along the way. So first off, and this has been mentioned a few times, we have the roadmap for team managers. This is a document they put out every year. It lays out agendas for the first few meetings, gives you strategies and tactics for as a team manager, and helps you to develop a successful team. And in this case, success means making it through the season. If you guys get to the end of the season and have a performance to present to us, that's a win. Additionally, this year they've got the roadmap addendum, which focuses a lot more on, you know, all the modifications that we're seeing this year. So how to work remotely, how to present your solution virtually. Getting a little more specific is rules of the road. It doesn't apply 100% to Rising Stars teams, but it does cover things like the overall rules of the program, general procedures, and some of that it does include the Rising Stars program. And then, so you guys really wouldn't be getting into clarifications. Probably could have left that out for you. The challenge itself. The challenge they put together for the Rising Stars teams goes beyond what they do with the normal competitive challenges. They include a lot of things beyond the elements of the challenge itself. They've got resources that have been curated for you as Rising Stars team managers. They have, you know, strategies in there for planning and managing your meetings, and they have a lot of sample instant challenges that they put in, and some guidance on how to get through that whole process and really help with your team's success there. Then finally, there's some resources outside of that. We've mentioned a couple times members of the regional board we're here to help you. We want to see your team succeed. Depending on which school district you're coming from, you probably have a number of, experienced team managers who have been here. They're going through they've gone through what you're going through now. Everybody's a first-time team manager at some point, and hopefully, after you've been through the experience, you will be a veteran next year. So to reach out if you've got district leadership with DI, if you just know other team managers, it's a great community for help. Then finally, through Destination Imagination's website, they have their resource area again, where all the documents come from as well. They have a blog on their website, and of course they're on social media like anybody else, and they will frequently post articles, tips and tricks, videos, all sorts of things there. The final thing I wanted to touch on, and it's kind of adjacent to the Rising Stars Challenge, but DI is really kind of rooted on the concept of interference. So unlike anything your kids may be involved in, this is their own product. So if you have kids that are playing soccer, you have a coach that tells them where to go. Get the ball, go up the right, pass it to Jimmy, whatever, cover that guy. It's very directed. It's directed by coaches. DI is not like that. When you get into the competitive level especially, and I know Vince touched on this earlier, but when you get to the competitive level, everything the team does is theirs. They completely own their solution. That includes the ideas they come up with in the beginning, their process of developing everything, and finally their presentation. And that really is kind of what makes DI unique. I should have taken that last bullet point off. But basically, as a team manager, your role in this whole thing is to guide them along the way, to give them the resources they need. If the team wants to explore video editing, that's going to be very relevant this year. Don't show them how to do it, but get them to resources to do it, or rather don't do it for them. Again, it's Rising Stars. There's a little more leeway in there. We want the team to succeed. There aren't scores, so there aren't penalties or deductions. But the more the team takes ownership of everything they do with it, the more that sets them up for success, and that they get more out of the program, frankly. So I think that's it for there, and we're on to Q&A now.
So everybody, I know you have 1,001 questions. You can, like I said, if you feel shy, you can put it into chat. You can go to our website and you can submit questions that way. Go ahead, and if you want to, turn on your video and maybe, or I'm sorry, definitely turn on your microphone, turn on your video, and if you have any questions, we're here. We're here until you're done talking. So let's go ahead and I'll take the first question. Oh, come on. Someone has a question. Matt, you got any good jokes? I see Alyssa's thinking about it. There she is. Hi, Alyssa.
Yeah. Hi. Thanks so much. And I attended your other training, Vince, on, I can't remember what exactly it was called, but for virtual meetings. So the idea, I just has observation, and maybe just because we can't meet, or because it's virtual, like in this training, if we had a student who needed some individual feedback because of maybe behavior or something, but we shouldn't, and from the other training, we should not meet with them individually through Zoom. And so somebody else always needs to be there. So that would, but if we don't want to involve the parents, it's weird. So I feel like the parent, it wouldn't be just me and the co-manager having a Zoom with the child saying something about behavior, or is that the way you guys are seeing it? Or should we always involve the parent kind of because of just we're in this virtual world?
Well, I'm thinking, this is just my own opinion. At this age, you're going to have to involve the parent. I mean,
Yeah.
Think about it, Alyssa, if someone was talking to your child about their behavior, you would certainly want to know about it. And
Yeah.
you know, the thing about Zoom is, you know, we're recording this meeting right now, but don't ever forget that at any given time a meeting could be being recorded. There are other applications out there. I have an application that'll record any part of my screen. So you need to assume that there's always a tape recorder running. So
Mhm.
especially at this age, I would involve the parents.
Yeah.
Maybe it could be, you know, sometimes conversations get heated in the moment. Maybe it could be an email back and forth so that you have time to pick and choose your words and the parents have time to pick and choose their responses. So, but the no one-on-one, DI does recommend, especially at this age, even when you have a full meeting of all your participants, that the parents are in the room too, that they're listening in, and, you know, they're going to need, you know, a 5-year-old is going to need to be prodded by their mother or father. Hey, you know, let's turn on your microphone, or it's your turn to speak, Johnny or Sally. So they'll be in that room with you. So I don't know if that, Matt or Doug or Beth, you have anything else to add?
Well, I just, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I just think that, yeah, it's a whole different scenario this time. And I think that, you know, talking, if it needs to be, you know, that you can talk with the child in any way differently over the phone or with a parent, especially with a parent, but not with the rest of the group there. Unless it gets, you know, the behavior gets worse. And then it is talking with the parent and the child, or if you have to go to a coordinator, just get ideas for how to handle the situation. You're certainly welcome to call any one of us or to email, whatever, just to help with some of that. There are suggestions. I know on some of the Q&As from previous team manager trainings, there are some Q&As that address some of those kinds of questions. But certainly virtually, yes, it's using what we know and what we have to do as far as Zoom and virtual, you know, rules to address these things. Hopefully that isn't a problem. But I know in the past I've had, as a mentor, I've had team managers say, oh, there's this child and she's running around and she's getting into everything, and, you know, and so, yeah, some of those are individual kinds of things to address.
Can I?
Looks like, yes, Debbie, go ahead.
Thanks. You touched on this a little bit, but I'm concerned about the fine line with interference at this age. So you had talked about being able to say, oh, you would get a refrigerator box at Lowe's, which obviously my just turned 6-year-old has no idea about. But it just seems like there's so many of those like really fine points where I don't want to say something that I shouldn't say, but also, you know, I want to make sure they're not just, you know, super lost. So can you help us just define that?
So Debbie, it's important to remember, in the Rising Stars, there is no interference.
Okay.
You can be as big of a helicopter parent as you want, or a helicopter coach, but you're not doing them any favors. So now what I'm about to talk about is only at the Rising Stars. You would sit down, you know, first of all, why do you need a refrigerator box? Well, I'm assuming you're going to paint a background. So, you know, you would start off talking about, well, what can we use to paint a background and stuff like that? And, you know, let them come up with ideas. I mean, if I can talk real quick, what we used to talk about when we met in person is, I call it it's a red light, green light, where say they're trying to pick like what they're going to use for their background. We go into what we call a green light, and I'll get back to your refrigerator box, where the kids can shout out whatever they want. You know, hey, let's use a sheet, let's use cardboard, let's use wood, and you just write it all down. It's a green light. No one is allowed to say, oh, that's stupid or that won't work. Just write them all down. If you want to use the whiteboard that Matt suggested or what have you. And then you go into red light, where you say, okay, those are great ideas. Now let's start talking about the sheets and stuff like that, and the wood. And, you know, we'll will this really hold paint? So then once you do decide, for example, in the refrigerator box, then you again, as a Rising Stars team manager could talk about, well, where do you think they have cardboard that's that big? I mean, look around, everybody look around in your house and see if there's anything that you think is big enough that would come in a box. You know, again, for a kindergartner or a first grader, you're going to probably have to guide them to, well, what about your cat condo? No, that's too small. Well, what about your refrigerator? Does anybody remember when you got a new one? No. Well, I bet you they come in a box type of thing, and then talk about where they come from. So, you know, that's how you would do it. You know, hopefully they'll get the answer, but as a Rising Stars team manager, you can lead them down that path.
Okay, that's super. I have a son on a competitive team, and so sometimes I get
Right.
a little mixed up between the two. So that's super helpful. Of course, we don't want to do anything for them, but it's very helpful to know that we won't be crossing lines if we help guide them with that.
And as a competitive team manager, here's why you don't want to go down that path, because, you know, say we're in a real life tournament, and the judge will say, "Oh, I really love what you did with that background there. Tell me, why did you guys decide on cardboard?" "Oh, well, our coach told us cardboard's a great idea."
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's no bueno. That is classic interference. So, Doug or
Yeah,
Matt
and what
or
I would
Beth,
say is I would
Yeah,
just say in general, always be thinking, asking questions, start broad, and then if you have to narrow your questions, narrow your questions, appropriately.
And many times you can also just
Beth.
say, with your questions, you can just say, well, what do you think? You know, there's this, you said this, and now what do you think is the better one? Or what do you think will work? Or will it cost money? You know, they can come up with a lot of those things themselves, but you can guide them through that.
I was trying to talk earlier and didn't realize that my phone was also on mute, so you guys couldn't hear me. Dara had a question that she posed in the chat earlier that I wanted to make sure we got to. Dara, did you want to elaborate on that? Dara, are you there? Her question, let me go back and find it in the chat. Where is it? Okay. Her question was about balancing fun and task-oriented and how to go about doing that, especially with this age group. I will just share, so some of the structure that we typically do in our meetings are, we would start off with a question of the day. We would start out with a question of the day just to kind of get the kids comfortable. And then we would usually have an outline and an agenda of saying, okay, we're going to focus on, we need to accomplish this today around the team challenge. Maybe we just need to explore this element and brainstorm, like Vince said, brainstorm different, what does this element mean to us? What are some possibilities? And then we're going to do an instant challenge. And then we're going to come back around and we're going to explore this element of the team challenge or what have you. But really breaking up with some team building activities, some instant challenges, trying to do at least one instant challenge every practice, maybe two, a fun team building activity that just helps build that connection, doesn't necessarily related to an instant challenge, as well as spending some time talking about the central challenge. In my experience, it's the first couple of months that's hard because they're just brainstorming and coming up with ideas around the central challenge. Once you get in the final 2 months, now typically there's extra meetings in the final 2 months, in my experience, especially with a competitive team. But in the final 2 months, once they're starting to put it all together and they're working on their props and all that kind of stuff, they're engaged, they're having fun. That's rarely something that you feel like you have to break up with the instant challenge. But to me, in my experience, those first 2 months maybe, where you're really trying to get a handle on what are we going to do to solve the central challenge, sometimes it can bog down, and really breaking up with instant challenges or team building activities is important. So that's my experience.
Okay, I'm going to drop into the chat. These are notes that we normally, when we meet in person, that we give to everybody. They've been modified for the virtual setting. They're also available on our website. You'll definitely want to, if you see that, you can download that, or you can go straight to our website and get it. Next question.
It looks like Mike raised his hand. Mike, go ahead, take yourself off mute. There you
Hi
go.
everyone, my name is Mike. I'm a first-time team manager. My son is in kindergarten, so we have a new group of kids just learning this. As I'm reading the books, it talks a lot about research, and I'm really excited for that, but I'm also really nervous because I don't want my son kind of Googling the same way I might expect a middle schooler to do. I'm kind of anticipating just providing links that I'm going to say, go here and then ask him to look, or can you speak to more of the balance of how we should navigate that in our current distance environment? I think if I go to a library, it'd be different, but I don't know how to do that in this environment.
I think with it being Rising Stars, I think that's perfectly valid. Kind of going back to what we were saying earlier, you know, the same rules aren't there regarding interference. The team will get more out of it by, you know, being aware of, you know, the idea of interference. But, you know, especially at this age, normally you'd be able to teach skills to the teams. We talk about that at the competitive level. If they want to learn, excuse me, learn a particular artistic technique or how drawbridges work, you know, that is something you can help the team learn to do, or how to use power tools. And at the Rising Stars level, you know, how to research something is absolutely a skill you can teach. How to even just approach problem solving is something you can teach. So, you know, again, there's no scores at this level where you would see some repercussion for getting too involved. I think the fact that you guys are concerned about interference tells me you're in the right place to begin with. I wouldn't get too down into the details on where exactly that line is. It's always a little murky with shades of gray anyways. And at this level, I mean, if you're trying to help the team do the work themselves and get to a solution that's theirs, you know, if you need to step in and give them a little guidance, that's, I think, perfectly fine for Rising Stars.
And if I may add, in the DI youth protection policy, it talks specifically about internet usage, and the official word from DI is, at this age, the kids should not be on the internet alone, whether it's you sharing your screen and you Googling something or Binging or what have you, or the kids with their parents going through, you know, I would never unleash my first grader onto the internet. I mean, you could have all the filters in the world, and you want to talk about ruining a child. So definitely, you know, encourage the parents to help them out. Have a talk with the parents about this, not interference per se, but this concept of, you know, let them lead and let them think and be creative about it. But you know, have that conversation with the parents, and then, you know, if the parents need to help them research, then by all means they can research. Even at the competitive level, the parents can be there in that room. They just shouldn't be saying, oh yeah, you should go over here to learn how to cut wood. And what Doug was saying is important. If you want to, if we were meeting in real life and, you know, you're talking about putting costumes together, you could have someone come in, as long as you're there, and teach the students that want to learn, this is how you put material together, or this is how we screw a screw. You wouldn't want to actually screw the actual screws for them, but you would just teach them how to, you know, how to use a electric gun and what have you. So Matt or Beth, anything else on that?
Let's see. I think there's some questions if they want to know more about what is interference, what is not interference. And one of the things that I always kind of thought about was examples of interference, and many times can be like, if you're showing differential positive encouragement for some ideas rather than encouraging all ideas. So when you're saying things like, oh, that's amazing, or that's the most creative answer I've had today, you know, you got to be careful with those things that, you know, that doesn't come off as interference, that you're pushing them in that direction necessarily. And just, you know, doing it all, helping the team members in any other ways. Of course, this time it's going to be very different. But saying things like, oh, the appraisers will just love that solution, you know. So you got to be, you know, be careful about the more objective, or asking any kind of leading questions, which I think you'll be aware of.
And the way you help keep that in mind is you need to repeat yourself often. You know, once a day as you sit down there ready to start your meeting, just say to yourself, it's not my solution, it's their solution. You may, in your heart of hearts, you may want to have a cardboard box. And if you start guiding your questions down towards that cardboard box, you're going to exclude all the other creative ideas that those kids have. So I think that's what Beth's alluding to. We have any more questions? I mean, the four of us, we'll stay in here for a little bit longer. If there's no more questions, as you see in the chat window, you know, please go to our website and fill out some feedback. We just want to know, you know, how we did, what could be improved. We read those. The four of us, actually the entire board, will get together next week and go through that feedback and, you know, make sure that each week each year we make it stronger and stronger. As new team managers, I want to let you in on a little secret. We're part of this Ohio DI, and within Ohio, Region 12 has a real good reputation, and part of that reputation is what the board does for you, and it's what you are doing for the board. That feedback helps us improve the program for next year, and then year after year, it just keeps getting better and better. So I encourage you to go to that forum, fill out some feedback, and honest to God, the 200 years of experience we have on sitting on this board, we are here to help you help the children. So if there's nothing else from Doug or Matt or Beth, like I said, we'll stay here for a little bit. We'll go ahead and turn off the recording. So if anybody feels a little constrained by that, we'll stop recording.